Well, my dear, so today we're going to be working in our second class of the first of the intermediate one. Ready? It's our second class of the first week. In the previous class, we were talking about how to use some kind of connectors that were the relative pronouns, something that you have known before, like how to introduce extra information with who and extra information with when. That's what we saw the last time. Questions about it, difficulties, anything, everything great.
No, teacher.
All good. Great. So today we're going to continue with like working on how connecting ideas, but at the same time, we're going to be working specifically about one topic. I would like you to tell me, well, look at these two pictures and what professions do you see there?
What is the second profession?
What do you think?
Mm, Psychologist,
Psychologist, yes, of
maybe.
course. So the first one, of course, that it's a doctor, right? This is a doctor. And the second one is a psychologist, right? So psychologist. Very good. The question is simple. The question is which one is more difficult? In your perception, of course, in your opinion, which one is more difficult?
Teacher, in my opinion, to be a doctor is more difficult.
I think the same. Yes, I agree with you. Yeah, of course, have like to be a doctor, it's more difficult. You have more responsibilities, different problems, more difficult patients. No, so well, I think that to be a teacher,
The
to be a
blood,
doctor. Yeah, of course, the blood, the organs, a lot of those things, right?
yes.
So it's more difficult on this way. Bueno, very good. What are the most difficult parts about the doctor, I mean, about that profession? You said the blood, you know, the blood. Anything else? Anything else that you see like, this is very difficult?
Mm, how do you say symptoms?
Symptoms.
Yes, but confusion symptoms.
Confusing symptoms.
Yes,
Like, for example, you have cough. So you don't know if it's a flu, a cold, or
yes.
amygdalitis or something like that, right?
Hmm.
Okay, so the confusing symptoms. Okay, very good. That's great. Good. And taking into account or thinking in the profession of the psychologist, what do you think it's more difficult? What are the difficult situations there?
Mm, for example, the problems that uh, mm, problems of the, how do you say, niñez,
Childhood.
cómo llegar a esa profundidad.
Okay, childhood problems.
Yes.
Good, excellent. That's it. But now you tell me something important, and it's that, well, okay, when we have the difficulties, we have something, no, like an object, like the blood or the confusing symptoms or the childhood problems. But it's not only that, it's we have an action there, and it's, for example, in here, llegar o encontrar esos problemas. Cuando hablas de la sangre, ¿qué es lo difícil? Verla, tocarla, sentirla,
Verla.
verla, ¿cierto? Cuando hablas de confusing symptoms, ¿qué es lo difícil? Identificarlos, decirlos,
Yes.
so,
Entenderlos.
entenderlos. Very good. So in that case, it's not only that, but the thing that we have difficulty with is an action. So in that case, for example, the problem is see the blood. In this case, it's understand confusing symptoms. And in this case, for example, is find the childhood problems, right? But it turns out that when we say, for example, like, uy, no, es que ver la sangre es muy difícil. That action, it's going to be the subject of the sentence. In that case, that action is not an action, it's the subject of the sentence. So remember that when we have a verb and I want to transform the verb into a noun, what I do is that I modify the verb and I include the ing form. So today we're going to see how can we use the gerunds in order to describe actions of the things that we do. So in that case, for example, no, seeing blood, it's the most difficult part, or it's horrible, or it's disgusting, right? Understanding confusing symptoms is very difficult, or is very confusing, of course, no? Finding the childhood problems is one of the most difficult parts of the psychologist, right? In the same way, I said, for example, bueno, which one is more difficult? And you said, teacher, it's more difficult to be a doctor, but in that case, it's better using the gerund being a doctor, and being a psychologist, right? So in that case, we can use the verbs in gerund in order to describe the things that the people do in their jobs, right? Or in order to describe exactly the profession as it is, right? For example, we're going to see here, let me show you over here, some opinions that different people have about the careers that they choose, right? So of course, here we have like different careers, different professions, and they have different opinions about that, ready? So let's read some of them, and then you tell me if you agree or disagree, right? Read please the first two, these two in this chart. Could you please read it?
It is very difficult being a firefighter. Working as a police is very fun.
Very good. So the person, the firefighter says like, I know it is very difficult being a firefighter. So he's saying the action of being a firefighter is very difficult, right? The other one is saying, working as a police is very fun. Yes. Working as a police is the sentence subject, right? Then we have a verb, which is, and then we have a complement. But in that case, an action, I mean, we are talking not about the person, but we are talking about the action that the man does, that is working as a police officer, right? In the same way, for example, over here, being a doctor must be rewarding. So the doctor says, bueno, here we don't have a doctor, but imagine a doctor says being a doctor must be very rewarding. So being a doctor is the subject, is the action that we are talking about. And the verb it must be very rewarding, right?
Teacher, what is the meaning of rewarding?
Rewarding is like gratificante, like when something
Okay.
makes you feel comfortable, no? So in that case, the man says, see, okay, it is. I love working in poor hospitals. So in that case, I have a subject that it's I, the doctor says I, and the action is love. But what is the action that he loves? He loves working in poor hospitals, right? So remember that we can find these kind of gerunds at the beginning or at the end of the sentence. For example, here it's at the beginning, working as a police officer, being a doctor, yes. On the other action, on the other example, sorry, it's going to be at the end. It is very difficult being a firefighter. I love working as a police officer, right? The most difficult thing about being a dentist is dealing with people's fear of us. So in the case, both gerunds are in the sentence, right? Or for example, in these examples, Andre, could you please help me to read it?
Working with movie stars is very demanding. Building houses sounds like a big responsibility.
Exactly. So the architect says, no, building houses sounds like a big responsibility. The action of building houses, right? Or the man says like, okay, working with movie stars, that is the sentence, right? Working with movie stars, the director says that no, is very demanding. So in that case, what we're doing is talking about different actions. The action of working as a firefighter, the action of working with movie stars, the action of working in poor hospitals, the action of being a doctor, a dentist, or whatever, right? So in this case, the gerunds can be positioned in two different parts. Wait a second. The gerund can be at the beginning as part of the subject, yes, or the gerund can be as part of the complement of the object. Ready? So I can have the gerund at the beginning, which is verb in ing plus a complement, working as a teacher, working as an environmental engineer, working or being a leader, a team leader, for example, no? And then the verb, not always, but usually it's going to be the verb to be in any of the forms. For example, here is because it's like simple present, is. But I can have other different forms of the verb to be. Can be, should be, must be, might be, may be, yes, or past, was, were, or future will be, right? or other verbs of opinion. For example, looks like, or sounds like, right? Or seems like, yes, other verbs of opinion. Ready? So, for example, working as a teacher sounds very difficult. Could be. Working as a teacher seems like a big responsibility. You know what is the meaning of seem? Do you remember what is the meaning of seems? Andre, do you remember?
Excuse me, teacher. Seems es como parecer o
Parecer,
algo
very
así.
good, exactly. See, it's a verb of opinion. So it's saying like parecer, bueno,
Parece.
for example, working as a teacher seems very difficult. Parece muy complicado, right? So, or working in Medellin seems very fun. Like that, no? So when I have the
Teacher,
verb at the
for
beginning, yes,
example, if I say working as a teacher was very difficult, se entiende entonces que yo trabajé como profesora, algo así.
exactly. You
Ok.
already stopped. It was difficult before, now it is not, right? Or for example, working as a teacher was
No
difficult
tengo que decir
before.
que yo, sino que fue como,
Yeah, no, no, not necessary. No, in that case,
ok,
because it's not necessary. I mean, you're giving your opinion about that action. So it is implicit that it was you, that you try it. So it was like you being a teacher before. Mhm. Okay.
ok,
So
teacher.
that is the first option, putting the gerund at the beginning in the subject, right? Or the other option is to use a normal subject, I, you, he, she, and to use the gerund at the end in the part of the complement, ready, of the object, okay? So in that case, for example, I don't mind working with kids. The subject, it's me. In that case, I am going to use a subject, can be I, you, he, she, whatever, and a verb which is, in the list of likes and dislikes. I enjoy, I like, I don't like, I hate, I prefer, I don't mind, I can't stand, all the expressions that we were before, and the expressions with prepositions, right? I am good at, I am interested in, I am good for, I have a talent for, I am afraid of, and all the expressions that have prepositions. All of them can be included here in this part and followed by a gerund. Okay, this is like a review
Ok,
of the
teacher.
one what we saw in the basic two. Do you remember that class about the gerunds that we saw before?
Yes,
Don't
so.
remember? Yes, exactly. So, well, basically, it's like a review. We can have the gerunds at the beginning or at the end. Both parts are going to be just fine, right? Of course, what's the idea? The idea is that we want to express something about an action, not about a person. It's basically about an action. Yes. For example, in this case, you told me that seeing blood is for you. Yes. Oh, well, you don't know because you're not a doctor, but you said, "Hey, teacher, I think that seeing blood might be difficult or might be disgusting." Yeah. So you said might be. It's a possibility. Understanding confusing symptoms must be, if you are sure, that must be complicated. Yeah. So using the gerund at the beginning, I am describing my opinion about that action, right? Finding childhood problems is the biggest challenge. Do you know what is the meaning of challenge? Yes.
Oh, reto.
Yes, exactly. So you're saying that for a psychologist, finding childhood problems is the biggest challenge, right? And so on, so on. You can use also, for example, describing the action, no? Like I said, working as a teacher is very difficult. Working with kids is very demanding, no? Being a doctor is more difficult than being a psychologist, right? So you can describe the action that is that profession. Or of course, you can also describe the person. You could say a psychologist, yes, a psychologist is more relaxed, Yes, is more relaxed than a doctor, usually, no? So you can talk about the person. If I am not using being, but I'm talking about a psychologist, because I'm referring to the person. But if I'm saying, okay, no, being a psychologist, then it's not the person, it's the profession, no? It's the action that the man is doing, is being a psychologist. Ready? Questions over there, Andre? All
Okay,
good?
teacher.
No?
So the principal part or focus of the sentences is the action.
Yeah, I mean, the focus of the sentence is going to be an action, and we want to give my opinion, or I want to give yeah, something, I want to express something, my opinion or a point of view about that action. Okay.
Okay.
Mm, good. But as I can say, of course, it can be also directed to the person, no? So that's the difference between using a gerund or not. If I use the gerund, it's because I'm talking about the action. If I don't use a gerund, that's it, no? So it's like,
O sea, en estos casos no importa el doctor ni el psicólogo, sino ser doctor o ser psicólogo.
exactamente. Entonces,
Okay.
ya si quieres hablar del psicólogo o del doctor, ahí sí ya pues simplemente es a psychologist, a doctor, and that's it. ¿Listo,
Yes,
my
teacher.
dear? Bueno, uh, the question for you, it's pretty simple. It's, how do you like? How do you like being an, is that environmental engineer? Yes?
Yes, teacher.
Okay, so how do you like being an environmental engineer? Environmental engineer. What do you think about it?
How do you like vendría a ser como lo que me gusta de ser.
Like, ¿qué te parece?
Ah,
Básicamente
okay.
es, ¿qué te parece? Right?
Teacher, in my opinion, being environmental engineer is very interesting. Uh, is very complex in some things,
Okay.
but is very interesting for me.
Okay, very good. You can also complete, so for you, it's interesting, it's complex, of course, right? You can complement it saying the things that you like and dislike. For example, like if I say, how do you like? It's all complete, your general opinion. So you could say, for example, that it's complex and interesting, but at the same time, you can complement it saying, like, for example, well, I love doing this. I don't like doing that. No, for example, if somebody asks me, how do I like being a teacher? I would say that being a teacher is great, right? But I prefer working with adults because working with kids is difficult for me, right? I am very good at working with adults because I can make my students close to me, right? Working with kids, I think it's pretty difficult because they can get out of control sometimes, and I am not a person like a very patient person. So I prefer working with adults for that. And also, being a teacher is great because permits me to have different schedules, right? I love working at night because I have a lot of difficulties with getting up early. So that's why I love working at night. So if you see, I use a big variety of journals. No? So I love working at night. I have difficulties with getting up early. I prefer working with adults. I am not good at working with kids. So I give my opinion about the thing in general, but I include a big variety of journals, right? So think in your opinion, what are the things that you like or don't like about the job that you have. For example, you are a leader, so what do you think about being a leader? Is good? You love it? You hate it? What do you think?
Teacher, I prefer working as a leader. And in my opinion, for example, as environmental engineer, I prefer working also in field. and early.
Ah, okay, early. Okay, okay, very good. So you said, okay, I prefer being a leader, or you could say I enjoy being a leader, So it's like something that you like. And as an environmental engineer, I prefer working on the field, outside, outdoors, and early, So you don't like, you say, teacher, I don't like staying up or staying out so late, Could be also. So that's the idea, So the idea is that when we want to give our opinion about something, we can do it using, describing the aspects of that action, using the gerund at the beginning or at the end. We have a big variety of decisions that we can make. Ready? Hasta ahí, Andre, questions, difficulties, or problems, anything?
No, teacher.
Okay, so good. Ready, my dear. Very good. Well, I'm going to have here some example. Well, this is the examples that we have seen before. Ready? So over here. Ah, my God. Sorry. Let's wait. I close it. Wait. Next. Over here. Well, over here we have some gerunds on the screen. Yes, we have some actions, usually more than everything related to working life. So working with computers, working with my hands, having my own money, waking up early, remembering things, moving my body, working on theoretical tasks, working on weekends, working with other people, working outside, working alone, working on a practical task, yeah, working in an office. So from those actions, think or choose some of them, right? And included, like, or think, how do you like them? If you have problems with them, or if those actions are fine, or if those actions are wonderful. No, for example, making jokes, making jokes in my classes, making jokes in my classes helps to create rapport. Rapport, it's like closeness with the student, no? So making jokes in my classes helps me to create rapport between a student and teacher. Like there is some closeness, so I gain the confidence of the students, right? Making jokes. That's one action, no? So some of you find some others and like complemented or thinking on your working life, on your as an environmental engineer, as a team leader, as an everything of that, right?
Okay, teacher. For example, working with my hands is difficult for me because I have no strength in my hands.
Perfect. That's it. So it's difficult because I don't have strength on my hands. Well, good, excellent. You have to work it out, but the example is great, right? Yes, exactly. Maybe that's it. Okay. Anything else?
As environmental engineer, moving my body is better for me in my work. Working, for example, walking in the how do you say camino?
The road.
Uh, the roads.
Mhm, mhm.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Well, so I assume that you work like in rural areas, not in the urban
Yes.
part, but you work more in the rural areas, right?
Yes. It's
Mhm.
better.
Yeah, of course, very
The
good.
air is clean.
Yes, it's not so polluted like in the street, no?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, very good. So you see, we can have a very big variety of aspects, on my job that can make me like it or not like it, So, for example, as I said, waking up early is very difficult for me. That's why I love working at night. Could be, I feel bored working on a theoretical task. That's why I enjoy working on a practical task. So that's better. I don't like working on weekends, so that's why I prefer working until late, so I don't accumulate work for the week, right? So there are a lot of different aspects. Every single aspect is going to include an action that I can include as a gerund, right? Of course, I can say simply, for example, a practical task. That's it. And I can say, I prefer practical tasks. But of course, the idea is to be specific enough and include what do you have to do with that practical task? Is just testing a practical task, working on a practical task, practicing with a practical task, avoiding practical tasks. So in that case, the action that we do with that object is different. No, for example, what we say with the blood. Okay, the blood is difficult, but what is the action of the blood that you dislike the most? Okay, no, you said seeing blood. Yeah. Maybe for another person, it's not difficult seeing the blood, but maybe touching blood is the problem, right? So in that case, using the gerunds is going to help me to be more specific with the objects that we include. Questions about their difficulties or problems?
No, teacher.
These are right.
I am
Right.
good.
Very, very good. Well, idea. So in this case, the idea is that we already have the first part that it's talking about gerunds, talking about the actions on my job. Now, in here, we have that, oh, the question was, which one is more difficult, right? We have which one is more difficult because I want to make a comparison between the jobs, right? In this case, of course, that I can describe, compare them, saying like, okay, but a doctor is more necessary, for example, right? But at the same time, I can make comparisons using the gerunds, right? So how can I do that? Let me just erase this part. First, as is a comparison, I am going to have two objects. The object A, that in that case is, of course, the doctor, and the object B, that in that case is the psychologist, right? But depending on the comparison that I am going to create, I can do it with the gerund, or I can do it with the person, right? So I am going to have different kinds of comparisons. I'm going to show you. The first part in a comparison is going to be, of course, the objects, and then we have the verb. That is the action that we want to compare between both of them, right? Then we're going to have the comparative expression. You know, the comparative expression, especially the part number one, it's going to be composed by prepositions that help me to compare. For example, more, for example, less, when it's about quantity, or for example, better, or for example, worse, when it's about quality. Yes, and of course, when it's equal, we have the comparison as, or saying as, right? That's the comparative part number one. Yes, and it's going to be accompanied with the second part. The comparative part number two. When it's more, less, better, or worse, it's going to be the same second part, which is than. More than, less than, better than, worse than. And when we have as, it's the same as us. Simple as that. Ready? Here in this part, in the center of the comparison is going to be the king of the comparison, the most important part. Yes. And there are different ways that is going to be that are going to change here. Normally, what we can do is to include an adjective. Or also we can include a verb in past participle. Sometimes the verbs in past participle are working as adjectives. For example, respected. Right, I'm going to make a list. I'm going to make a list super fast. Wait a second. Over here, good. So I can say, for example, respected. It's a verb in past participle, but in that case, it's working as a characteristic of the object. Or for example, required. It's working, it's a verb in past participle, but it's working as a characteristic. Or for example, trained. Or for example, prepared, right? All of those are verbs in past participle, but are working as a characteristic of the subject. Ready? Or I can have the adjectives, the normal adjectives, no? For example, responsible. For example, difficult. Yeah, the one that we saw before. For example, rewarding. What do you remember what was rewarding? What, rewarding, ¿qué era eso? Olvidé.
Gratificante.
Or for example, I don't know, challenging. You know what is the meaning of challenging?
Retador.
Retador o desafiante, very good, excellent, right? Or for example, simply exhausting. Exhausting. Oh, sorry. Exhausting, right? So I can have different kinds of adjectives and characteristics. Sometimes they might be verbs in past participle. Sometimes they might be others in, like, characteristics, adjectives, difficult, great, amazing, whatever. Ready? That is going to be the focus of the comparison here. What I have to include is simply just organizing the idea, but it's very easy because it's just putting one element after the other. When we have an adjective or a verb in past participle, since they are characteristics, the characteristics are things that we are. That's why the verb usually it's going to be the verb to be, right? For example, the question was, which profession is more difficult? Of course, in this case, I'm talking about the profession, being a psychologist and being a doctor, because the person is not difficult. No va a decir que un doctor es más difícil que un psicólogo, sino ser un doctor es más difícil que ser un psicólogo. That's why I include the gerund, right? So it can be sometimes simply a doctor and a psychologist. Sorry. Psychologist. Bueno, psychologist, chichín, ¿cierto? Solamente a doctor and a psychologist. Or sometimes can be the action. Being a doctor, yeah, when it's talking about the action and the person being a doctor, and being a psychologist.
Teacher, can I say, for example, being a doctor is more respected than being a psychologist?
Exactly. Being a doctor is, because it's verb to be muy bien, is more respected than being a psychologist. Yes. De pronto el psicólogo es más respetado que ese doctor en específico, pero la acción como tal de ser doctor es más respetada que ser un psicólogo. Muy bien, excelente. Right?
Pero también podría decir, a doctor is more respected than a psychologist.
Exactly. So it has to be very careful because sometimes I'm talking about the person, sometimes I'm talking about the action. Yes. For example, if I say, which one is more responsible? What do you think? Which one is more responsible?
A doctor is more responsible than a psychologist.
But in that case, you don't say being a doctor because la acción no es la que es responsable, es la persona. So in that case,
yes,
a doctor is more responsible than a psychologist. Muy bien, that's it. Ready? Entonces, excelente. Bueno, which one is better trained? Trained is like entrenado, similar to prepared. Which one is better trained?
A doctor is more prepared than a psychologist.
Okay, so in that case, for example, when we talk about train or prepared, more than more, it's going to be better because ambos están preparados y entrenados, pero uno mejor que el otro. Entonces, in that case, no es tanto sobre cantidad, sino sobre calidad. So you said, a doctor is better prepared or better trained than a psychologist, right?
Okay. No sabía que more se refería como más a cantidad. Pensé que era simplemente como un poquito más.
Sí, es exacto, sí. O sea, cuando dice a little better, puedes decir también igual. O sea, better es como more, pero hablando más de calidad, ¿cierto? O sea, no tanto de cantidad, sino de calidad. Muy bien. ¿Listo? Perfecto. Entonces, that is the
Teacher,
option.
for example, being a doctor as a rewarding as a being a psychologist.
Exactly. Being a doctor is, don't forget the verb, is as rewarding as being a psychologist. Muy bien, excelente. ¿Ready? So, cuando usas as, así la segunda parte es as rewarding as prepared as, Con los otros cuatro, more, less, better, worse, is than. More than, less than, worse than, better than.
Okay.
So, bueno, that is the option number one. That is talking about characteristics, adjectives, right? The option number two is the opposite. We have sometimes characteristics, and other times we have other thing that it's called the nouns, right? The nouns, remember that the nouns are going to be, the nouns are going to be the things, the name of the things, right? And in that case, it's not going to be talking about characteristics. It's going to be talking about objects, real or non-real, but objects that we have, that the people have. For example, the benefits. Yeah. For example, the responsibilities. abilities. For example, for example, the salary. Yes. For example, the facilities. Facilities son instalaciones, right? Consultory, laboratories, all of that. Facilities, right? For example, free time, something important, right? Free time. For example, schedule. For example, what other thing? Equipment, equipment. For example, patience also, patience, right? For example, problems, right? For example, what other thing can they have? No, let's say that. Let's say like that. So all of those are not going to be characteristics. All of those are things, right? Like things that the people usually have, right? But also we can make comparisons with them. And instead of using here the verb to be, because this is something that it is not the person, no? Here, since these are like possessions, we're going to work with the verb to have, right? So have or has, depending, of course, if it's the subject, he or she or they, depends, no? So in that case, for example, Andre, who do you think that has more benefits?
Teacher, in my opinion, uh, mm, being a psychologist have more benefits than being a doctor.
Yeah,
Is correct.
yes, very good. The only thing is that being a psychologist has, because it's it, no? So
Okay, okay, has.
has more benefits than being a doctor, of course, because they have more vacation, better schedule, also good. That's it. Muy bien. Which has less problems? Which one has less problems?
Uh, maybe we can say real problems. Uh, a doctor has more problems than a psychologist.
Exactly. Yeah, good. But the question was which one has less problems? So it would be the opposite, no? A psychologist has less problems than a doctor. Ready?
Yes, yes.
Very good, exactly. Well, both have facilities, no? The psychologist has like a consultory, some laboratories, some rooms, right? Also, the doctor, they have some in rooms, like hospital, with full of rooms, full of things. But which one has better facilities? Usually, sometimes can be exceptions, but usually which one has better facilities?
Usually a doctor has better facilities than a psychologist.
Of course, no? So that's it. Excellent. And both have a schedule, right? Because the psychologist has a specific schedule from 7 to 5 or something like that. The doctor also has a schedule, maybe it's rotatory, no? It's called, is changing the shift, no? El turno, the shift, right? But it has a specific schedule. So both have a schedule, but which one has worse schedule than the other?
Uh, Teacher, what is the meaning of a schedule?
Schedule is horario.
Okay. Um, a doctor has a worse schedule than a psychologist.
Of course. No, that's it. They have horrible schedules at night, 12 hours. Well, they have terrible schedules, no? Muy bien, very good. Well, and in this case, when we have an equality, since this is countable and non-countable, we would have, and we can use sometimes only as, únicamente as, is going to have the possibility to include as many or as much, depending if it's countable or not countable, right? For example, which one has more patients? No, they have the same. Ah, bueno, entonces a doctor has as many patients as a psychologist because it's the same. If it's non-countable, for example, the free time, yeah, it's not countable. I would say, okay, a psychologist has as much free time as a doctor, right? So, taking into account only with us, únicamente with us, y únicamente con nouns. Con los adjetivos no pasa, porque los adjetivos no tienen número. Entonces, no pasa. Pero
Teacher,
con el no,
but patience is countable.
yeah, patience is countable. You see?
Right.
And no patience de paciencia, sino patience de pacientes, right?
Ah, okay.
Porque la otra es este patience, que es de paciencia, ¿no? Es decir, no es ni contable ni no contable porque eso es un adjetivo, ¿cierto? Ah, mentiras, es
Yeah.
un sustantivo, pero no es contable, ¿cierto? Entonces, no problem. It's
Okay.
patience, right? Pero patience, este que es pacientes en plural, ese sí es contable, right?
Okay.
Muy bien, excelente. ¿Listo? And the
For
last
example,
is
a doctor has as much problems as a psychologist.
contable.
Es contable. As many problems.
Siempre que lo
Ah,
veas plural, André, es porque es contable. Por ejemplo,
okay.
facilities
Eso es un
es
buen tip.
contable. Exacto. Responsibilities es contable. Benefits es contable porque está en plural, ¿vale?
Okay.
Bueno, perfecto. Pero sí, así es la cosa. Entonces, a doctor has as many problems as a psychologist. ¿Listo? Bueno, that was the option number 2. Making comparisons with the nouns. Ready? With the things, the possessions that we have. And then finally, we're going to have the option number 3. The option number 3, it's making comparisons with something also very important. Making comparisons with the verbs. Ready? So in that case, the center of the comparison is going to be the verb. We have different options, right? So here it's going to be empty. We don't have another king of the sentence. The king of the sentence is going to be the verb, right? And what we're going to do is simply connecting this part with this part together. Here it's empty, nothing else. And we're going to focus our attention here on the verb. What are the actions that they do? Well, they do the same actions like they work, they study, of course, because they have to read continuously, no? They travel sometimes. They are people, so they sleep, they rest, right? They, I don't know what else. They eat, no? They, what else they do? They treat patients, let's say that they earn, which, it's money, ganar, pero de dinero, right? They spend also, no? So, good. So in that case, the focus is not an action, it's not a characteristic, it's not an adjective, it's not a very past participle, it's an action that they do. And we can also make comparisons with that, yeah? For example, I could perfectly ask which of them, the doctor or the psychologist, which one works more? On your opinion, of course.
In my opinion, a doctor work more than a psychologist.
I
Is
think the
correct.
same. Yes, I think the same. A doctor, well, since in this case is a doctor, is only a doctor works more than a psychologist. If it's in
Okay.
general, you could say doctors work more than psychologists, included. Or if it's this one, it's in third person. A doctor works more than a psychologist. Ready?
Yes, teacher.
Good. Sleep. They both sleep. Ambos duermen. Pero, which one sleeps better?
A psychologist sleeps better than a doctor.
Exactly. A psychologist sleeps better than a doctor. Muy bien, that's it, right? Which one earns more?
A doctor earns more than a psychologist.
So in that case, the same, no? More than, less than, better than, lo mismo. With us, since all of the actions are uncountable. When I have an action, it's not countable. I don't have the possibility to use with as many as. I only have the possibility to do it with as much as when we talk about an action, right? For example, which one eats more? No, they eat the same. Ah, bueno, entonces a doctor or doctors eat as much as psychologists, right? When an action is the same, it's as much as. As many know because the verbs don't have a number. Yes, so that's why. So, ready? Questions
Okay.
about the difficulties?
No, it's
No,
interesting.
it's all right. Muy bien, very good. Bueno, my dear, so these are the different ways of comparisons that we can have. Comparison of equality and comparisons of superiority, right? So we can do it with adjectives, we can do it with gerunds, we can do it with the person, we can do it with the nouns or the characteristics or even the actions that they do. We can compare everything, ready? So over here we have some examples and I would like you to complement it for me, ready? Over here, we have first two professions and the comparison is empty. So find one and make a comparison, that the one that you prefer in these examples first. Just one of them and complement it with a comparison.
Teacher, being a liar is more respected than being a politician.
A politician.
Politician.
Okay, so being a lawyer is more respected than being a politician. Listo, perfect, that's it. No, easy, right? Or for example, singing opera has more problem. Oh no, here it's singing opera has more challenges than singing rock, for example. No, so has more challenges. Talking about challenges, not necessarily about the characteristic, but also using a noun. Listo? And in the second case, in the second example, Andre, what we have is the opposite. We have a comparison. I would like you to include two professions. Read the comparison, choose one, and include two professions that fit into that character, into that comparison.
For example, working as a teacher is not as well paid as working as a doctor. As working as a doctor, yes.
Yes, yes, working as a, see, of course, very good. So working as a teacher is not as well paid as working as a doctor. Completely true, right? So that's it. Ready? And of course, I can do it with the gerund. Working as a teacher is not as good, or simply with the person. A teacher is not as well paid as a doctor. That's it. Is your decision if you want to emphasize on the action or if not. Listo, dear?
Okay.
Bueno, in the checkpoint of the week number 2, yes, the second part is going to be with the second class, o sea, with the second week. So that doesn't matter, the part of the written part. But there is another part, which is an interview, ready? It's an interview for the position of flight attendant, ready? So what you have to do, Andre, is to describe why the company should hire you, ready? It's like a short mini introduction and job interview in which you have to say, why do you want to be a flight attendant? Which are your characteristics? And why the company should hire you. Recommendation, do it in including gerunds and including the who and when. For example, I want to be a flight attendant because I love working on airports, for example. Because traveling around the world, it's a dream for me, right? Or you can also do it using the connectors of the last class. I am someone who likes working on teams. I am someone who has a talent for following instructions. So you are using who, and at the same time, you are using the gerunds for the description of that. And if it's possible, no, I know that it's possible. Include one or two comparisons about flight attendant job. For example, I want to work in this company because working in this airline is more prestigious than working on the other airlines. Because a flight attendant travels more than, let's say, than a teacher or something like that. So try to include in that short interview the topics of the first week, which were topics about personality, about job, about working on that. So it would be the best idea to include these subjects into the exercise of that checkpoint. Ready? Okay, Andre?
Yes, teacher. Is that the first part of the checkpoint? Yes.
I don't know if it's the first or the second, but it's the oral part. That is the oral
Okay.
part. Ready? So
Okay. And
showing.
the other part is
The other part I explain the next week because it's with the topic of the second week.
okay.
Okay, so the next week
Teacher,
I will explain.
in the platform, the first week of the intermediate one,
Mhm.
say 4 of the July.
Ah, no, don't worry about it. Don't worry because that's the dates that we had at the beginning. But since we didn't, no, those dates are not going to coincide with the dates that we have. Don't worry about the dates. I tell you where we are. Don't trust on
Okay.
those dates. Okay.
Okay, teacher. Thank you.
Bueno, Andre, no problem. So, my dear, have a good weekend. Enjoy and see you the next week. Okay, see you next week. We have one class, but it's a long class. So, it's going to be on Wednesday, I think, at 8. Ready? Okay,
Yes,
Andre?
teacher.
So, bueno, my dear. So, see you next week. Have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy. And if you have any questions with anything, you just have to text me. Okay?
Thank you very much, teacher.
Goodbye. See you soon.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.